So I would like to speak to the caretaker, please. I believe that you're still looking after the graveyard and this building here.
Well, we've returned to Petworth Chapel.
So we're down by the this mass grave. We've got the headmaster up there, along with the assistant teacher, and in here are the bodies of the 28 children that were killed.
Did you just hear something then, Jeff? I'm not sure.
I was hearing someone speaking. Now we know that George is here. The music box has gone off. It's detective movement coming from somewhere in the doorway.
Yes, sir. Yes,
If I'm poison, manufacture record.
Yes, sir.
Go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Here we go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Here we go.
It's like a light is in my face, but I can't fall for you. I close my eyes and drift away. I've overdosed on you. Cause then you wake up dead one day.
Petworth Chapel. The chapel, which was also once the local mortuary, was built in 1865 by Lord Leconfield. As this land and surrounding area was once part of the property of Petworth House. A sexton was employed to look after the chapel and grounds. On Tuesday, the 29th of September 1942, at 10:25 a.m., a lone German bomber, a Junkers 88, was approaching from the south. Its target was Petworth House. Petworth House was home to 3 army camps. There were 3,700 men and several hundred vehicles, including the top-secret amphibious Sherman tank, which could propel to shore when launched from a vessel. The bombs that were dropped all missed their intended target. One of the bombs was deflected off a tree, striking Petworth Boys' School. There was no air raid warning given, and of the 80 children at the school that day, 28 were killed and a large number injured. The headmaster, Charles Stevenson, and assistant teacher Charlotte Marshall were also killed. A report at the time stated, "One of the most terrible blows to any community in the country from bombing in recent months befell a small town in Sussex this week. Bombs dropped by a single raider who appeared over a rift in low clouds fell on a boys' school with catastrophic effects. There were between 70 to 80 boys in the school with the staff." The final report as to the numbers killed were not available when the story went to press, but by the nightfall of that day of the raid, some of the boys were still unaccounted for. It was then stated that there were 28 dead, 18 missing, and 34 injured. One boy who was in hospital died during the night. Bodies and debris were hurled far and wide. Some of the bodies were found over a high wall on the opposite side of the road. Digging was resumed the following day, with more bodies being recovered, but many of the remains were unrecognizable, with the clothing being the only way to identify them. The Petworth workhouse was opened in 1820 and accommodated 112 inmates. It was situated next to the Petworth Boys' School. The men's accommodation was in the south wing and the women's were in the west wing. The north wing contained the wash house, boiler and bakehouse with a laundry room. Because death in the workhouse was not uncommon, the workhouse had a dead room or mortuary which was often near the infirmary. This building usually had high opaque windows and good ventilation. The graveyard was next to Petworth School, which also backed onto the chapel and cemetery. The chapel and cemetery were closed in 1947. Since that day, visitors to the graveyard have reported children playing and laughing, and figures of children have been seen inside and around the chapel. On our first investigation here, we experienced the paranormal activity.
I just see lights in there.
So what I'd like to do is ask if there's any spirits here who'd be willing to communicate with me now.
The voice seemed to come from maybe just over in that area there. Swap you over with that.
Someone just pulled my jacket.
No. I wonder why you moved a bit quick then.
To let me know you're here. Shout as loud as you can.
Whoa.
Don't move, Phil. The full spectrum photographs of the shadow figure that we captured, which we believe is the entity known as the caretaker, caused a stir in the paranormal community. Shadow Paranormal went to investigate the location and also to try and debunk or find another explanation for what we had captured on our photos.
And the thing that really interested me about this place was I saw a video from Ghostech Paranormal Investigations, who investigated here last year, and they brought along a full spectrum camera. Now, for those of you who don't know, full spectrum cameras have the filters on them removed so they can view UV light, infrared light, as our night vision cameras do, as well as visible light. And the idea is that paranormal events or spiritual energies can be witnessed within these light spectrums that we can't see with our own eyes. So they took a number of photos in the chapel, and there were 3 that came out that were extremely interesting. They appear to have captured what looks like the partial manifestation of a spirit. I've analysed the photos and I can't really work out what could have caused that kind of an anomaly. If something's in front of the camera, something's in front of the lens, you'd expect it to be coming from the edge of the frame, whereas this manifests itself, you know, right in the middle of the frame, which is very unusual. I can't really think of a way that anything could have caused that. We have actually gone and got ourselves a full spectrum camera, which we're going to be using tonight, and see if we can try and capture a similar anomaly on camera. No, there's no shadows or anything. So I can't even think, because I was thinking earlier, how would you go about recreating those photos? And they were taken live, like, because I actually reviewed it live whilst they'd taken it, you know, on camera. So I hadn't...
because now I've looked at it myself, I can see that it blocks out your own shadow.
Yeah.
So there's no way you could recreate that unless it was
No.
Photoshop.
And I'd say even if you tried, even if something, I don't know, flew in front of the camera, it'd be coming in from the side of the frame, rather than just being completely in the middle.
Yeah, it just there's nothing. So I don't think you could fake it.
No.
You know what I mean?
No, it'd be very difficult to, and very difficult to do it like live on camera, and then
No, there's literally nothing.
no.
Only recently, this photo, which is taken down by the mass grave where the children are buried, seems to show an image of a young boy's face. With our static cams in place, Phil and I start off the investigation inside the chapel and mortuary.
Well, we've returned to Petworth Chapel. We were last here, must have been a good 2 years ago, possibly slightly longer actually, thinking about it. But we wanted to return because we've done quite a bit more research on this particular building. One of the things which I wasn't aware of last time was the actual use of this place. I thought it was, I knew it was used as a mortuary, but also I thought it was used as a place of worship, but it wasn't. It was used as a chapel of rest. Obviously this would have been where people were brought and laid up before being buried in the cemetery outside. Now, last time we were here, something quite bizarre happened. Jeff was taking photographs of me. I was standing roughly where I am now, and a black mass came up out of the floor just behind me, just there, and it was caught across 2 or 3 photographs and then disappeared. And at the time, during the investigation, Jeff spotted it and he said, "Hold on a second, something not right here." And we looked at the pictures live on film, and we couldn't really understand what it was. It was quite unbelievable to see this mass stood beside me. Anyway, I don't know if you remember me. My name is Phil, and my colleague here is Jeff. If you were the entity that appeared beside me, could I ask if you're still here? Now, I know when we came here, I think we were probably one of the first, if not the first, people that did an investigation here, and a number of people have been in since. So you may have seen other people, but we're here to talk to you to find out what your story is. I'd like to know why you appeared beside me. Were you manifesting yourself because I'd asked you to, because you wanted to talk to me? Or was it that you didn't want us to be here and you were trying to frighten us off or to ask us to leave? Did you just hear something then, Jeff? I'm not sure.
I was hearing someone speaking.
That's what I thought.
Did you hear that voice as well?
Yeah, it was from, well, I possibly outside. I don't think there's anybody out there. I can't see any torches. It's quite dark out.
There's no one outside there. We both hear a disembodied voice, and it is captured on Phil's digital recorder. A voice telling us to leave and then asking us to move. Here is the enhanced audio.
Was it that you didn't want us to be here and you were trying to frighten us off or to ask us to leave? Did you just hear something then, Jeff? I'm not sure.
I was hearing someone speaking.
That's what I thought. Was it that you didn't want us to be here and you were trying to frighten us off or to ask us to leave? Did you just hear something then, Jeff? I'm not sure.
I was hearing someone speaking.
That's what I thought. Now, I know this place used to be looked after by a sexton, a caretaker. And I'm wondering whether the caretaker is still here and is asking us to leave, certainly to find out what we're doing. We mean no disrespect, but this place now is abandoned, it's pretty derelict, and we'd like to know if you're still here. So could you talk to me, please? Come and say something next to me. There was a bang from outside, but I couldn't tell you what it was.
Loud banging sounds are heard coming from outside the doorway. Here is the audio with enhancements.
The other thing which happened last time I was here, and it was just outside the chapel, was my jacket was pulled. And it was quite a tug on the back of my jacket. Now, yes, it made me jump, but if that's a way you can communicate, is it possible you could touch one of us now?
We ended our first session inside the chapel and mortuary and made our way down to the mass grave where 28 children lost their lives during the Second World War.
So we're down by the this mass grave. We've got the headmaster up there along with the assistant teacher, and in here are the bodies of the 28 children that were killed, really I guess by a freak accident during the war. Their school was just next to the chapel there. So we've laid out our tripwire that will pick up on any EMF, and here, this is where George Charles Hunt is here right in front of us. And it's got his name plaque there, and I've put a sensitive digital recorder. Hopefully we can capture his voice. So good evening to you all. At any time whilst I'm talking, if you can try and light up these lights, and that will let us know that you're here. Now we know that George is here, and I was gonna
At this moment, a voice is captured saying, "Yes, I am." Here is the audio enhanced, taken from my digital recorder.
Now we know that George is here, and I was gonna Now we know that George is here, and I was gonna Your mum, she published this book all about her life, and you're inside the book as well. She mentions you and how distressed that she was.
Another EVP comes through saying, "I am." Here is the audio with enhancements.
And you're inside the book as well. She mentions you and how distressed that she was. And you're inside the book as well. She mentions you and how distressed that she was. So George, I've got some pictures here. This is one with your mum, and there you are standing next to her, and on the other side is one of your sisters, Susan. Do you remember them at all? Now, unfortunately, your mum passed in 1998. She was aged 92. Has she found you? Have you found each other now? Also, George, I found another picture of your mother here. Her name was Lillian. She was 20 in this picture. And also in that book that she wrote about her times with the family, this is a little bit from the book where she speaks of you. And she says, New Year's Day gives me a new feeling of new life, new hope. Everything just beginning, and I find after months of depression, which I always find descends on me like a cloud when September comes, ever since my precious son was killed by a bomb at school, I can square my shoulders up and make a fresh start.
We finish our session at the mass grave and go back to the chapel. We set up an EMF tripwire and a music box facing the main door, which will activate if there is any movement.
So I would like to speak to the caretaker, please. I believe that you're still looking after the graveyard and this building here. Now on the floor we've still got the REM pod, and we've got a little music box there that's pointing out towards the doorway, because the last time we were here we did hear movement at the doorway. So I'm hoping maybe you'd like to come through, and then that will play a little tune to let us know that you're standing there listening to us. Also surrounding the floor is an EMF tripwire. None of this stuff will hurt you at all. If you touch it or go near it, it will just light up different colours, just to let us know again that you're here with us. So, as my colleague Phil was saying, we're not here to disrespect you or anything like that. We know what went on here. We know what happened in the war, which was really terrible. It would be nice to know your name, though. So I've just turned on this sensitive digital recorder and see if we can capture any voices. So is it possible for us to speak to the caretaker, please? Or indeed, if you can show yourself, if that was you that appeared behind us next to Phil last time. How long did you work here for? Do you look after the children that were killed during the war?
As we are reviewing the recorder to see if we have captured any EVPs, our music box is activated and detects movement within the doorway.
The music box has gone off. It's detective movement coming from somewhere in the doorway. Hello? Who's there?
There were no EVPs on our recorder, so we commence our final session.
This area all around Petworth would have been predominantly agricultural, and still is to a certain extent. But one of the things which we know is that immediately behind this building there was a workhouse. Now, workhouses in the late Victorian times were pretty rough places. People's life expectancy was quite short. Now, people would have died and they would have been brought here, many of them. So what I'd like to ask, if there was, or if there is anybody here who perhaps worked in the workhouse, perhaps you stay here because you feel you're obliged to do so. Last time I was here, you pulled at my jacket. Can you do that again? Pull at Jeff's jacket.
All fell silent at Petworth Chapel, and we complete our investigation. We will remember those that lost their lives on Tuesday the 29th of September 1942, and the families that had to live with the loss of their loved ones. But the devastation does not stop there. It also affected those that survived.
On the 75th anniversary of that event, survivors, relatives of the dead and townsfolk today staged an act of remembrance. Sean Killick reports from Petworth.
A quiet Sussex town, an unlikely setting for a massed grave containing the bodies of 28 children. To most people, their story is unknown, but here at least it's not been forgotten. 75 years ago, Petworth Boys' School was destroyed after a German aircraft dropped its bombs, possibly targeting Canadian troops in the grounds of nearby Petworth House. Days later, a procession of lorries carried 28 small coffins through the town, and the Canadian troops helped carry them to the grave where the friends who died together were buried together. Today, school children lined the sides of the grave for a special ceremony attended by a handful of survivors.
I was buried for a time and then I realised I was all right and I struggled and I got myself out, and the first thought, well, I'm going to run home now, and started to go up the road, but the headmaster's wife collared me and said I had to go into her house.
I can still see these boys just as they were. I get a bit overwhelmed sometimes, thinking about it. It's a long time ago now, but they haven't altered. I can remember all of them.
Jean was 9 years old. Her brother Alfred was 10. He nearly didn't go to school that day. The weather was bad and he'd just come out of hospital.
I know my mother tried to get my brother to stay at home and he wouldn't. There was something at school he wanted to do.
So he wasn't going to go that day possibly because of the weather?
He wouldn't have done, no, but it was something special. So she made him take his dinner and that was it.
what really came out of it was also the heroism of the people, the Canadians who came running across from the park, the soldiers, to try and help the vicar who hitched his cassock up and was there in the ruins and doing the last rites with the children, all of which he knew because they were in the choir and they were in the community. And, you know, it's a real impact on the whole community. It was just devastation.
A generation too young to go to war died in their classroom. Today's children vowed they'll always be remembered.